Right now, there is an unpaid bill sitting on the global table, and no one wants to pick up the check. It's a $1 trillion invoice for damages already done to the planet, and a massive financial battle is underway over who will pay it. This animated chart breaks down the projected economic costs of climate loss and damage in developing countries. You can see the numbers climbing rapidly, hitting $400 billion a year by 2030, and soaring past $1 trillion by 2050. When we look at communities on the front lines of extreme weather, we see what those numbers actually mean. The people wading through these severe floodwaters are losing their homes and their livelihoods right now. Groups like the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition are stepping in with a specific demand. They want to enforce the polluter pays principle, a mandate to directly tax extreme wealth and the windfall profits of the companies that created this crisis. They reject the idea of international charity. Instead, they frame this money as a direct invoice billed to the fossil fuel industry for the damages their products have caused. The oil, gas, and coal industries have actively fought against funding these climate reparations, and that resistance comes despite the fact that the industry has pulled in an average of $2.8 billion in pure profit every single day for the last 50 years. When pressed to pay up, the industry relies on a consistent public relations defense. They argue that aggressively taxing their profits will destroy global energy security and make electricity unaffordable for everyday people. The implication is highly effective. If governments tax our windfall profits, we can't afford to drill. The power grid will collapse and your lights will go out. This is a carefully constructed public alibi. By tying the public's access to electricity directly to their own corporate profit margins, fossil fuel companies position themselves as the victims of climate taxes, rather than the target. In 2022, the UK introduced the Energy Profits Levy, an extra 38% windfall tax dropped onto offshore profits, pushing the headline rate to 78. But to test if the warning is actually true, we have to cross the English Channel and see how the European Union handled an even larger crisis. In 2022, the European Union faced a massive, immediate threat to its grid when it was rapidly cut off from Russian fossil fuels. You can see the scale of the response here on the Berlaymont building in Brussels, where they hung the banner for their RE-Power EU initiative. Instead of easing taxes and incentivizing companies to drill for more domestic oil and gas, the EU used the crisis to aggressively fast-track the deployment of renewable energy infrastructure. This graph tracks EU electricity generation. Watch the renewables line climb upward until it crosses the declining fossil fuel line, providing more power than oil and gas. Simultaneously, the EU permanently shrank natural gas demand by 19%, all without the grid failing. Rolling out massive solar farms like this one across the continent requires completely overhauling how a population generates and consumes power. It involved upgrading power corridors, deploying millions of heat pumps, and modernizing local grids. The European Union clearly proved that true energy security comes from actively eliminating a dependence on fossil fuels. It completely dismantles the UK oil industry's excuse that heavy taxation and reduced drilling will inevitably lead to a national collapse. The resistance against paying for climate damages makes a lot more sense when you realize the fossil fuel industry is fighting to protect an era of unchecked capital accumulation, not to keep your home warm. We can see that severe imbalance in this diagram. In 2022 alone, the fossil fuel industry benefited from roughly $7 trillion in global subsidies. That circle completely dwarfs the tiny dot representing actual contributions to the Global Loss and Damage Fund. When youth activists in developing nations hold up signs demanding justice, they are pointing out a very literal economic reality. The money needed to fix the world's infrastructure and protect frontline communities already exists right now in corporate bank accounts. We already have the technology to deploy solar, wind, and storage on a continental scale. The transition to a clean energy economy is waiting entirely on financial accountability. The $1 trillion bill for the climate crisis has officially arrived, and if the polluters who ran up the tab refuse to pay it, the rest of the world will have to.